With the release of his new book, Banking on Change, James Robert has been at the forefront of understanding and guiding organizations through change. And he's here today to share the biggest insight he's gained while on the road for his book launch tour.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm Audrey Kanata, operations lead here at the Digital Growth Institute. And joining me today is founder and CEO, James Robert Lay.
Hey, Audrey. It's good to see you. Good to share
Hello.
time with you.
Yes, sir. You as well. Excited to talk a little bit more of banking on change today.
Banking on Change has been the topic over the past few weeks after we launched the book and then took the book on tour and got to share a lot of time with people in real life and listen and learn from what they're gaining from reading the book. And it's always good to see and hear their comments, but then also too on LinkedIn, I'm still seeing people sharing I got a copy. This is what I'm learning. So it's as an author, when you invest the time to write a book, there's always this little sense of doubt that you have to overcome. Like, is this book going to help? Is this book going to really make a difference? And so you just have to quiet that voice. And then we launched it and the initial feedback. And then what I think we're now almost a month, right at about a month post launch, and the energy that is, we're starting to see orbit, if you will, around the idea that it's my hope that it becomes far bigger than just my idea, but it inspires the thinking and ideas of others to really come together and navigate the complexity of change in the age of AI together as teams and then also as organizations.
Yes, it has been really exciting. I know for me personally, getting a copy, real tangible copy of the book in my hands was so exciting. And then over the last few weeks, watching that book just make its way across the country at different events and in other people's hands. I mean, hundreds of other people have now had that very book in their hands, and it's been a lot of fun to follow along, really via LinkedIn.
It has been, and then also too, starting to see podcast requests trickling in, people wanting to have conversations around the book, and then some initial excitement from events wanting to bring this thinking into their conferences. And then also we're experimenting with this in real time, but it's because of some of these recent events, helping their attendees leave an event. They do feel excited. They do feel energized. But then I said, you know what? We know what's going to happen. People are going to go to these events. They're going to get jazzed up. They're going to see things from a whole different perspective. And they're going to have to go back to their organizations as individuals and help other people see the same thing that they're seeing, and then guide them through what I write about in the book, the 4 stages or phases for human transformation.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. One of the things that you shared with me while on this book tour was a pretty interesting realization that, the fear of change wasn't necessarily personal, but it was more so about the impact that it would have on team members and leadership and the entire organization. What do you mean by that? Unpack that for us. It's not personal, but more so related to the team as a whole.
That's a great question. And it's something that really came through some conversations that I was hearing. A lot of these people who attend these events and attend these conferences, they're there for a reason. They're there to learn. They have a growth mindset. But now, and in one particular event, it was in the workshop that I was doing. They said, listen, James Robert, you're connecting with me. You're resonating with me. I see all the opportunities that you're seeing. I see all the roadblocks that you're seeing, but you got to help me because I've got to go back and I've got to sell this to others. And I said, well, listen, the event's just starting. because it was a pre-conference workshop and we had maybe 250 people there. I was like, the event's just starting. You now have 2 more days ahead of you. Because do you feel like you could leave right now? And from what you've learned in this workshop, you have enough opportunity to keep you busy. They said, absolutely. I said, now compound all of that with all of the additional insights that you're going to gain. It really is going to be exponential. It's going to feel overwhelming.
I was going to say exciting yet overwhelming.
Exactly. And they agreed. And so what we did is we came back from a break and I asked everyone in the workshop, I said, listen, do you mind if we go off script here? Because I was going to share some additional thinking with you on another subject, but I've had at least half of a dozen of you come up and share with me this challenge that not really many people have ever talked to me about before at a conference or an event. Now, granted, I think a lot of it could be the fact that we've published Banking on Change, and so we're now starting to facilitate that type of dialogue around human transformation. But you have to remember, change, if you can navigate the complexity of change yourself, and if you have the awareness of where you're at on a transformational journey, whether that be emotionally, physically, and I know you and I are going to have some conversations about the point of the physical aspect of change and transformation, how the physical aspect will then impact the mental and the psychological and the emotional aspect. If you're able to do that yourself as an individual, you're in a really good place. But you don't take a transformational journey, particularly as a team, yet alone as an organization, you know, as one person. You're having to
Right.
work with others. And that's the whole point of change being more of a team experience, transformation being more of a team experience, and being mindful of the emotional aspects and
Yeah.
the psychological aspects that others on your team are experiencing, because you can be excited and energized. But if you take that excitement and energy back and communicate it at a high level of excitement and energy, back to your point, Audrey, that's where other people can begin to feel overwhelmed and they begin to shut down. They might not physically show that, but mentally, they're like, yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. No need to rock
Yeah.
the boat because it's worked so far.
Yeah, and I wonder, how much of that is because of the experience, these conferences, these events, being you did a 3-hour workshop. And so much of that experience, yes, you're gaining knowledge, but you're getting that emotive piece to it.
Mm.
That motivation, that excitement. You're spending a lot of time with, this topic and these individuals that are at the conference with you. That's really hard to translate back home.
That's a really good point. Furthermore, I do think that, like, from a consciousness level,
Hmm.
and I'll say this again publicly, like, I can't even believe that we're having conversations about, we'll call it human consciousness, on this podcast, because I know if this was 2020 when we started this podcast, that would not be part of the narrative. But a lot of it has just been my own perspective and watching people transform and evolve, particularly over the last 4 years, going through the COVID experience. You can get people thinking and feeling and experiencing similar states of emotion. A conference, as we're talking about here, a concert, even for that matter.
Energy transfer.
There's a lot of energy transfer there. And then also getting people to connect on the same resonance. So everyone is at a conference, they're feeling excited, they're feeling energized, they're feeling hopeful, they're feeling optimistic. They're feeling all of these positive levels of energy, thinking about Dr. Hawkins' scale of human consciousness. And if you're not familiar, it's a great measurement to kind of check where you're at. And once again, there's not a right or wrong. It's just objectively looking to see where your emotional level is. Because in Banking on Change, one of the things that I wrote about was how emotion is energy in motion. And emotion is either going to continue to spiral upwards, and you will continue to grow and ascend, or emotion will begin to move in a downwards direction. And if we think about the scale of human consciousness from Dr. Hawkins, that's where, you get stuck into some of the lower quote unquote energies of anger and frustration and guilt and shame. And I know that we have to be mindful of this coming back, A, from a conference, but B, also helping others within our organization navigate some of these emotive pieces of the journey.
Yeah.
Which it's actually interesting thinking about the emotive journey. That was a key part of the workshop that I did, was looking at a consumer's buying journey through the lens of financial services from an emotive lens, but that
Mhm.
same emotive lens that someone journeys through externally as an account holder, prospective account holder, those same emotive states, we then have to take and guide others through internally as well when we're bringing back new ideas and insights from a conference or from an event.
So how does one do that, James Robert? What is your recommendation? You come back, you've got all these great ideas, you've got a team, you want to share, but you don't want to, be overwhelming. And you do want to try to stir up some of that emotion, that motivation,
Mm,
um, connect energetically.
yeah.
How can a leader, successfully do this or effectively do this?
Well, it starts with, once again, all transformation begins within. And I think if we hold that truth central, we can, to a degree, self-regulate. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the spectrum of excitement to overwhelm, which I really like how you framed that up earlier. I have never really thought of it that way, but because excitement to some can be overwhelm to others. I know you and I probably play off that dynamic very frequently, because what can get me really hyped up, excited, and energized in the way that I communicate that at a very high energetic state
Yep.
can be received by you as, I don't know, you share what it feels like. Cause I think this is where, like, there's a lot of play and dynamics around the Colby
Yeah.
model here.
Yeah, really. I mean, I get to give a few specific conversations and one even recently. But generally it's either around technology. And then we had a conversation the other day about data and like visualizing data and putting stories to data. And you were so jazzed and so energized. And I remember just having this like blank stare. Like this is so over my head. I cannot, and it's not for lack of trying or wanting to. My brain was just having such a hard time computing what you were saying in the manner and at the speed you were communicating. I really just couldn't keep up.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, to a degree, and maybe you could provide some additional perspective here, like, I can see how those who are listening, who have experienced that themselves, they might feel quote unquote bad because they're not able to keep up with whatever the idea being
Right.
communicated is. And so, to a degree, that can make them feel less
Self-conscious.
adequate. Say again?
Yeah. A little bit of like self-conscious, like my
Yes.
confidence level is reduced a little bit in some of these conversations just naturally.
And for me, and I try to be way more conscious of the fact myself, and a lot of it comes
Right.
back to the work that we do with Colby and the Colby profiles, that, you know what, let me just slow down, or let's look at this from another perspective, because that's what this boils down to here. And I think, if we bring this back to your question, how does one come back from an event to effectively communicate what they learned, the ideas and the insights? We have to first and foremost understand the 4 steps for human transformation. And you and I are talking about step number 1. It's about seeing things differently. So, for example, you go to an event and you gain new ideas and perspectives. And really, there are 3 lenses that you're gaining these ideas and perspectives. First, you're hearing from someone sharing ideas, say, quote unquote, on the stage.
Mhm.
That's number one. Then
Yep.
you're probably having conversations in the breakouts or in the cocktail hours or
Yep.
networking events. And so you're probably rehearing that either from someone else sharing that with you, or you're then sharing your perspective back to someone else. So
Mhm.
that's the second point of perspective coming from an event. And then the third and final one that I'm not sure everyone does, or perhaps is even in their field of vision right now, it's their own self reflection. And it's the self reflection that can lead to self regulation of how they can bring these ideas back to communicate with others. Because when one begins to see different, they're then going to begin to think different. And just as we did within my breakout session and or in my workshop, and we've done a lot of breakout sessions too for organizations in the Banking on Digital Growth program, we ask the question, well, when you see different and you think different, what happens next? And 95 to 98% of people will say, well, I'm going to act different. I'm going to be different. I'm going to do different. And we know that's not the case. To bridge the gap between the thought and the action comes down to the feeling and the emotion. So the desire, the feeling, the emotion to then do different has to be greater than the desire, feeling, the emotion to stay the same. But
Yeah.
that's motivation and that's inspiration. And we know motivation and inspiration is like a muscle. It will eventually
Mhm.
tire and burn out. And so we'll fall back. But it's the feeling too, though, is if someone's going back from an event already in a negative place, in a negative mindset that, no one's going to listen to this stuff. So they shut them. It's a self-limiting belief that even shuts down the idea of taking ideas and taking action from them
Yeah.
coming out of an event.
It's also, I think, if the key piece and the 4 steps of human transformation is that feeling piece,
Mm.
that's not something you can simply transfer or teach somebody else. And I think that's where maybe the disconnect happens. You can, see and think, you can share ideas with someone, have conversations, but to get that, to bridge that, thinking and acting with the feeling piece, that's difficult. And I think, how does like storytelling come in, to help this scenario? And I was just finished reading Psychology of Money,
Mm.
and it talks so heavily about the power of storytelling over data and spreadsheets. What is your, what are your thoughts there on using storytelling to convey some of these thoughts
Well,
from the
let me tell you. Let me give you a story about story here.
Perfect.
So let's say you have two characters. One, we'll just call them they're a senior leader marketing executive. They go to one of these events and they see all of these new ideas and insights, and they get really excited about all the possibilities. But then they know, based upon previous historical experience, that a lot of these aren't even going to see the light of day. So they have already begun to shut down of what is possible because of a previous held belief. And so, yeah, they're going to get back, but they're nothing is really going to change. It's going to be the same exact thing as it was pre-event, as it was post-event. In reality, they probably could have not even attended the event to begin with in the first place. Um, the second, we'll call this the second character here. We'll just say another senior marketing leader, but they have some tools at their disposal. And one of them is because they have spent some time with us, they have the Exponential Ideas Framework. And so they
Yes.
know that before leaving the event, and particularly as we teach at the end of, say, a day or even a workshop might be a little bit much, but at the end of the day, they can go through the Exponential Ideas Framework so they can capture all of that thinking and feeling in real time so that when they go back, they're able to communicate with a lot more clarity and control the level of excitement so that they're not unintentionally overwhelming others. And so that ideas model, it's another acronym to where the I is insights. And so, and this works not just for conferences and events, but it works
Yeah.
for any type of learning modality, whether you have a banking on change cohort within your organization who is helping others navigate the complexity of change across the organization. That banking on change cohort is committed to continuous education and learning. And so, how do you learn? Podcasts, conversations, articles, etc., videos. But then you can apply it externally too with an event. So you take the top 10 ideas or insights that you gained at the end of a day or the end of an event. And so you're
Mhm.
self-regulating, like, here are the top 10 insights that I gained. Then you come through with the D, you decide what are the top three. Here are the top three out of my top 10 that I feel like are going to create the greatest value for my team or for my organization. So you decide those. The the E in ideas, so IDE, the E is now to expand. Expand why you feel like these top three ideas are going to create the greatest value. See, what's happening is no longer are you communicating just here's what I learned. Here are the top three things I learned, and here why are they important for our team or for our organization? And as a bonus to that, if you're able to communicate that in some type of a story or a narrative, we know it's the why that inspires action, not facts and figures.
Yep.
It's really connecting with the why. So no longer are you communicating, hey, this is what I learned, or hey, here's how we can apply what we've learned. You start the conversation off, here are the top three things I learned, here are why they are important. Furthermore, the A in ideas is now you're providing action. So here's why this is important. And here are a few actions that we can begin to take, or that I recommend that we can take to move forward and make progress. And they're micro actions. And it could be, you know what, I need to go talk to Ted, Bob, and Susie about X, Y, or Z to get their consensus, to see where they're at with this. Well, that's an action item right there, but you're already beginning to frame progress. So within the first 30 days, you're coming back from an event, you're having the action. And then the S is the multiplier, because if you think about this being a framework, IDEA, insights, top 10, decide, top three, expand upon those top three as to why they're important. The A is what are the actions that you can take to begin to create some momentum. And then the S is the multiplier. Who do you need to share this with? Already having that is, to a degree, a multiplying action, because you know you're going to have some conversations when you get back,
Yeah.
but you already have that game plan. And it also, too, who do you need to share this with externally? Because if you're sharing this externally with someone that you've met at the conference or the event, you're now creating some accountability for each other so that you can apply
Yeah.
this thinking or these ideas going forward.
I'm so glad that you shared this framework, because I think it's very helpful, especially in our industry, and knowing our typical Colby profile,
Mm.
which I am very similar to. And so I can empathize. You, the visionary, you come up with these ideas, these very, very future focused ideas. And I, for me, and I can see like you're sharing them, and there's so much enthusiasm and excitement. I almost can't even get myself to that point without knowing the how and the why and the action items. Like I like your vision, but I'm less concerned about the vision and how are we going to get there. Explain this to me. What am I going to do? What do I need to do moving forward? That's what I need to know. I can't even get excited about that until I know the road to get there. Once
Yes.
I know the road to get there and I know the path forward, then I'm going to get excited.
But I think that's where having a healthy dynamic of a variety of Colby
Yep.
profiles, it, like, I get hyped up and excited about the possibility of the future. For example, like if I, and I have, and I'm trying to be more mindful of this over the years, but it's like if I come back from, say, strategic coach, or come back from platinum elevated, it's like, oh my gosh, here's everything that I learned. No, here are the few things that I learned. Here's why they're important, versus just vomiting vomiting opportunity. I don't want to vomit
Yeah.
opportunity on you, because then it's just like, well, what do I need to focus on here? And so there's this healthy dialogue, discourse, discussion that can come from it, but a lot of that comes from we have tools that we teach
Yeah.
and that we also use to calm some of that chaos that others might feel. And the exponential ideas framework is such a practical, portable tool that it can be used to provide others with clarity. Because if we think about the emotive journey that we teach externally for marketing and sales alignment, the very first step is that idea of awareness. And awareness, the transformation that has to happen, the emotional transformation that has to happen, is to transform confusion into clarity. And so using frameworks like exponential ideas can help facilitate that when you're coming back from a conference or coming back from an event.
Yeah. And you also emphasized the importance of those support systems,
Mm,
accountability.
yeah.
When you're an individual going off to an event and you're coming home and okay, great, you've got your ideas framework, you are ready to share it with the team, but there's no one there on your team or at your organization to hold you accountable because maybe you're the only one that went.
Oh, that's such a good point, because we with one of these events, we are hosting a 90-day banking on change boot camp, specifically and exclusively for attendees that attended this particular event, because
Mhm.
I understand that pain, that frustration that you have to go back. You feel like you're an individual in a massive sea, and you're trying to, be a light to provide a pathway forward for others who can't see what you can see yet. And it's easy to feel like that light is going to get snuffed out, depending upon the culture of your organization. And
So sad.
so, go ahead.
So sad.
It is, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can keep that light burning brightly when you're working in collaboration with others
Yeah.
who are also trying to be the light for their organizations. And that's what we're doing with this 90-day banking on change boot camp. And the very first meeting that we're having with them, it's about 2 weeks post event. So it's long enough to, get some people registered who want to make this commitment to take this additional step. But then it's the very first session that we're doing is we're going to teach the exponential ideas framework so that they can have a strategic action plan to take the ideas and insights that they've gained a couple of weeks ago and begin to move forward and make progress with them over the next 30 days. And that's the horizon line right now. It's, you might have a 12 to 18, 24-month initiative that comes out of one of these conferences or an events. But if you can start to break that down into what can I do to affect positive change over the next 30 days, that's going to create momentum. And that momentum will build over time. And then in the second meeting, so we're now 30 days in, the second one is we're going to go through the what's going well framework, which is I know we don't have time to get into that today, but I'm just trying to, for someone who's listening, going to an event, giving them a path forward. It's like, what tools do you need? And so the what's going well framework is something that I wrote about in Banking on Change that helps to track progress, which builds the courage to commit to continue forward with confidence. And then finally, in the last 30 days, so we're now almost 90 days in post conference, it's okay, how do you want to continue to grow going forward into the next 90-day cycle? And so that's your goals, the roadblocks that you can perceive, and then the opportunities to overcome those roadblocks to keep moving forward there. So all of these strategic thinking tools that are in Banking on Change can be applied for any conference or for any event moving forward to really build a cohort or a framework that creates this sense of community
Yeah.
and continuous action, which then it's okay, we have those human connections. And so the next time that you come together for the conference or for the event a year from now, I'm predicting that those who commit to keep moving forward through at least a monthly or quarterly cohort, those human connections will be even that much more powerful once you reconnect in person.
So, as we start to wrap up, James Robert, thinking about the idea of accountability and community, for those who have been to conferences recently or just gotten back from some conferences who are looking for a little bit of accountability, um, we have a community for them, James Robert.
We do. And it's something that we have been working on for a couple of years. We started working with just our clients within the Banking on Digital Growth program. And then earlier this year in 2024, we started to expand that out. And I think now we have over 300 members as a part of this community coming from marketing, sales, and leadership teams. It's the digital growth community. And, if I think about just recently, one of our community members made a comment. She had a question about online account opening and how that fits into the omni-channel experience. And at least 8 community members have
Yeah.
hopped in to provide her with some additional perspective based upon their experience. And so there's definitely the ability to continue to connect with other growth minded leaders from marketing, sales, or leadership teams within financial brands, but then also to create some accountability as well, coming out of these conferences and events so that you can continue to move forward and take action.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell our listeners, how can someone join the digital growth community?
Yeah, it's super fast. It takes about 60 seconds. www.digitalgrowth.com/membership. And once you're in, you're in. And
We'll get you taken care of.
yeah, we'll get you taken care of, and more importantly, we've got some exciting things coming up for members within the weeks and the months to come as we're continuously looking to facilitate. I think that's the key. We're looking to facilitate community for growth-minded financial brand leaders.
Yes. Thank you, James Robert. This has been a good conversation talking about banking on change and insights from the road.
It has been a good conversation, a lot of fun as always. Thank you, Audrey.
Yes. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.